We are now ready to present the first key speaker, and the first key speaker is a colleague of mine. Her name is Elin Gunleiksrud, and she works as a human geographer, or her background is as a human geographer, and she worked in education and public health sector here in Vestfold and Telemark County. So, welcome, Elin Anne.
Thank you, Tone, for introducing me. Yes, I am a human geographer. I'm not educated in health, but I am educated more in understanding the factors that influences our health. And I'm going to talk about integrating mental health into public policy today. And as Tone said, I work as an advisor in the sector of education and public health. So, talking about mental health and well-being. Today I'm going to talk about mental health in maybe another way that you used to, because now it's more about how to deal with it in the perspective of making public health policy. So first, I would like to introduce you to what is public health. We define it as the state of and distribution of health in a population. And public health work is about actually all the society's efforts to influence the factors that directly or indirectly promote the health and the well-being. So there you have the mental health as well in the definition of public health work. And it's also about influencing the factors that lie behind and influence mental health and public health. And it's also a lot about social determinants of health, those factors lying behind, as I said. And we can split them into two parts, actually. The structural factors, they are related to having a job, having a secure home, a place to live, and having an education, because we see that social inequality of health is very well connected to your structural background, or the background of those factors. And on the other hand, we also have a set of other determinants or factors influencing, and that is the settings where you live, the surroundings, the relations. Everything you see around you is possible to influence and in public health policy, actually. Okay, we have this picture or this illustration that we recently made, and we feel that it's actually quite, I know there's a lot of details in this picture, but if you can recognize these structural factors on the left side, and you have the surroundings where we live our lives, and on the right-hand side, you see a house. And that is actually us working with public health. And what is true is that we see public health or mental health actually from a distance. We have this overview of it, the factors that influence it, and actually that is what you see that we're doing, working with inside that house. On the top floor, you can see that we are explaining these factors, and we have this overview of the state of health or conditions of health in our county or municipality. And we have a number of people working on that. And on the ground floor, you can see that we also have invited in some inhabitants into the building, because we are very eager to have their explanations about how it feels and what we can do. I will come back to that later. But if you look at the details in the picture, you can see that everyone is actually carrying something a bag or a backpack. And that is supposed to symbolize that we all carry with us, the structural factors, our childhood, our experiences, and everything, and that actually influences our health at an individual level, and then we sum it up, and then we have this population health. So that was a bit about defining the field of public health. These are actually some paragraphs from a law that we recently, in 2012, we recently introduced to Norway. And if you follow the link, you can see it in English, the Norwegian Public Health Act. And it says that we're supposed to have overview of public health and health determinants in the municipality and also in the county. And we have to define goals and planning and to meet the challenges. And we have to take public health measures. And in Norway, actually, there is a before and after the Public Health Act, especially when it comes to working in a systematic manner. And maybe you feel that listening to me and to how we do it in Norway is very context bound. I can assure you that actually all of this is very much influenced from the work of the World Health Organization. So it's actually quite international thoughts. Okay, the next. Yes, we recently made these statistics about the population, about the living conditions, about how we act and injuries, and also about the state of health in the population. So every fourth year we make this compilement of all these statistics. And I go back a little bit because you can see on the last picture or infographic I have here, you can see that it says 17%. And that is actually that 70% of young people are suffering from social distress. And we know that from quite a big survey, a questionnaire we do for young people from the 8th grade in secondary school, and also the first year of upper secondary school, and some even the whole upper secondary school. And we asked them a number of questions. This is a national survey, and there is a battery of validated questions that has to do with mental health. And we know that 17% are suffering from mental health, high levels of mental health distress. And that, of course, is something we have to do something about, to take measures against. And you can see here, this is the half part of our county, actually, because we merged into Vestfold and Telemark. And this is only the Vestfold part, because this is from before we merged together, and that was this year. And you can see that the levels have risen. So also we can see it split between boys and girls. And you can also see in this statistics that there is a connection between socio-economic background and levels of mental distress, showing that if you have a higher level of socio-economic background, the levels of mental distress is also lower. So this connection is there, and as I told you, about the structural factors lying behind, or the social determinants of health, you can see that socioeconomic background is almost connected to every kind of health condition. Okay, so that was about the mental distress. What about good mental health in teenagers? Because if we turn it around and see what about those experiencing good mental health, what are the factors that can act as buffers to mental distress? Colleagues of mine, Mari Haraldsen and Eli Haraldsen and Mari Espetvedt, they did this study of what factors that are related to good mental health. And Mari, she actually presented these results in a public health conference, or the public health conference, I would say, in Ljubljana. That was in 2018. You can find the links to this abstract from that conference on the next page, if you want to read it. What they did was they did a multivariate analysis of associations between good mental health and social relations and everyday digital activity using the survey materials from Ungdata, this big survey. And what they found was just a second. What they found in this quantitative survey analysis, multivariate, so you can see the strength of different variables, they found that school relationship was very important. A positive association found for, between good mental health and school relationship. And that was on the primary, as you can see. This is the sum up of the study. And secondary, but still important, that parents, friendships, and a conscious level of social media use is also important. And when it comes to parents, it was about parents that were awareness of the parents' awareness of the friends of the young people. So, and as you know, that quantitative analysis just gives us some of the answer. We have to dig deeper in to get really into the stuff, of course. But in working with the promotive or these buffer factors for mental health, it is evidential that promoting mental health needs to be given the same attention as physical health, like physical activity. We have these recommendations for like eating 5 fruits or vegetables a day. Mental health also have these simple recommendations, and you have maybe you know this ABC. This is 3 important promotive advices, and they are developed in Australia and also translated into Norwegian, but then it's not so easy to find the good words for this, because it's about acting, being active, to act, and to belong, and to commit. These are 3 important things to do to protect your mental health. And this is like translated into these 5 a day: to give, keep learning, be active, take notice, and connect. These we have also translated into Norwegian, and these are, we are working on those, actually having a campaign going in this corona time with well-known people, like a selfie campaign. They're telling about how do they try to keep active, I have it in English, to connect to others, to take notice about the surroundings, to keep learning. How do they do it? Like small recommendations. But these advices, I would say, are quite like individual, on the individual level. And as you know, I'm not going to talk about settings. How can we translate these individual advices into policy making? And here I introduce this setting approach. Because if we go to and ask the question, where is health actually created? We can use this definition from the WHO. They made this through the Ottawa Charter. Maybe many of you know that in the 80s. Health is created and lived by people within the settings of their everyday life, where they learn, work, play, and love. And that is that health is, in the first place, we could say, created in all other places than in the treatment room, like this girl is, this doctor is telling this girl that it's where you live, it's where you work, it's what you do in your leisure time. And I will give you examples of how we are working in these settings in a few minutes. But it's the daily activities, because the setting is both a place, or it could be the social context connected to that place. And we shape those environments by being there, and the environments, they shape us as well, or they influence us. And that is, I would say, where we can concentrate on implementing public health policy that can support mental health. Before I go to the examples, I wanted to show you about the settings that we've been working with. I just have to introduce you to another important element in the field of public health, and that is the bell curve shift in populations. And this is also known as the prevention paradox. I'm not sure if you've seen that before, but it's quite central to public health thinking, because if assuming that the health risk is normally distributed in this bell curve because of the shape, the paradox is that universal strategies addressing the whole population is more effective than only helping those obviously at risk. And that is, as you can see, then we are helping more people. And this is somewhat counterintuitive, because of course you want to help those at risk, and it's not saying that we're not supposed to do that. But in the field of prevention and health promotive, taking health promotive actions, then shifting the bell curve to the left is more effective. So, and it's also lowering the recruitment into the groups that are at high risk. If we manage to define the measurements or the actions we take in a manner that is population-based, that can reach everyone, then we also take measures that are not stigmatized or having that stigmatization effect, maybe. So this is not to say that it's not important to help those people at risk, and I know that many of you are working in NGOs with vulnerable groups. So I would ask you to think, if you think about those, what would be the measurements that could have prevented them coming into those groups or coming into those situations? What could have happened before to avoid it? And actually, there has been a number of studies that have confirmed that this is actually evidential, especially in alcohol abuse and also in prevention of depression among young people and children. So a small effect for the majority can have a large effect for the minority at risk if you manage to move that bell-shaped curve to the left. So where does that leave us? Well, back to the cycle of systematic work. You can see here that this is the never-ending cycle of making policy. First monitoring, and then try to take the right measures based on that knowledge that we gather. And also remember to evaluate, so that you know if these things are working. And then we need an action plan, like you can see an example of here. There are many ways of doing that. And you can see all those people I put in just to make us remember that we cannot do this without asking those people that knows the best what would be the best measurements, and that is about the participation element in it. So then I will turn over to talk about developing these settings of everyday life. And I would like to present you three different settings of everyday life and how we have been working and are thinking that we should be working about developing those settings. The first is participation in developing local community and local area, the surroundings around us. The other one is social innovation in developing leisure activities for young people. And the third one I will touch briefly into, that is life skills and health on the agenda in all schools. Okay, participation and developing local community and local area. And local community refers to the social part of it, and local area, the place or the geographical place. First, I will just give you some background details. There was a project, a national project, and that was state-funded, and it lasted from 2016 to 2018, about development of healthy local communities and local areas. And we took part as a county, and then we were only Vestfold, together with 5 municipalities. And the obligation, what we had to do, was to develop a better qualitative knowledge about public health challenges as input in local decision-making processes. And also to do that by development of public participation methods. And the common vision for that project or program was health promotive local areas and local communities. And I will show you how I think this has much to do with mental health. And the municipalities were supposed to develop these measures, and the county coordinated the progress and cooperation with also the regional university. Okay. What makes a great place? That was where we started. This is like a quite comprehensive guide from the field of placemaking. You can see that it has to do with key attributes: the sociability, the uses and activities, the access, the comfort, and the image of a space or a place. The intangibles are about the feelings that the place evokes. And there you can find quite a lot of elements that has to do with well-being. And on the blue part there, it's about how to measure it. How do we do that? And I think, to me, it seems that still we are here in many settings or connected to making plans. And this is a principle that maybe we need not to forget to erase it. And I think it happens because of many of us are in difficult funding situations. But it takes me to think that it's not enough to assume what people need. You have to work with them. You have to ask. And how do we do that? I think I will just show you this picture because I think it's so illustrative. A picture can say more than 100,000 words, we say. This is only an illustration to underline my point. And it shows, as you can see, not a very crowded place, quite abandoned. It seems like it's not in use, and what is written there is in Norwegian actually means "go to hell." Well, for me it seems like this was maybe a waste of money because the target group, maybe they were never asked, they're not there. Their needs and preferences were only assumed. And a colleague of mine reintroduced me to a planning theorist called Patsy Healy the other day. And I think it's quite interesting because in this field of making public health policy, you need to find elements from so many different angles. And here it says that in making spatial strategy, you could be either transformative, try to change things, or just responsive. And one of the dimensions that is important is enlarging the intelligence in the planning process, the planning of places. And then you need to, like it says here, explore and recast agendas of problems, issues, and potential actions at stake. And you have to do that through using multiple sources of knowledge. And also you have to use creative methods to get these different opinions about how to shape a space or a setting, which is a whole other lecture about participation ladder and introduction of all sorts of methods suited for the groups involved and the purpose for the process. And in this project, we combined a lot of methods. We were mapping the area by merely looking at it and staying there for some time and see what happens. How do people use this area? Like in a social spatial method, counting and arranging walks with target groups or bigger groups to map the area together with them, with young people, children, school children, and there were a lot of dialogues, much dialogue to do this. And Larvik municipality, they did all this. And that resulted in a plan. You can see in the middle of the picture the drawn plan there, the design of a plan, for establishing a park in a working class area, in a small woodland. And that was an area that the children said they were really afraid of passing through. And now they have this plan, and they have also the funding, I think, to implement it. So it's not only on the desk, and they were really, the children were really into the process and helping the planners with what to establish there. So we evaluated this project. That was a group from USN, and the evaluation report, I have some facts from that. They said that this project stimulated actually cross-sectorial work, changing the attitudes towards participation and public health work in the municipalities involved. And I think this is important. The contribution to life between the houses, with reference to Jan Gehl, maybe you know the famous Danish architect whose wife is a psychologist, who inspired him to incorporate and put the human experience in the center of design and city planning. And also this is important, that they found that the project contributed to strengthening the feelings of belonging and sense of place of those involved. So this was about local area. And now another program, Social Innovation in Developing Leisure Activities for Youth. Leisure activities for youth is a very important area, and there is a quite famous psychologist called Hedvig Montgomery. I think she's quite famous in Germany, I've been told. And she says that leisure activities are underestimated as important in children and teenagers' life, because this is where they can meet others that are of their kind, and that means a lot in the identity building process. So this is also an area for public health policy, incorporating mental health thinking. So the county and several of its municipalities are taking part now, actually, in a national program. I will give you quite an extraordinary example of one of those projects, but before I will focus on that approach, I will focus on the approach they all share in this program, and that is social innovation, and that is a way of working, a way of doing it. As you see here on the slide, social innovation is created by new ideas that address urgent, unsatisfied social needs, and we can simply describe it as innovations that create social value in both aim and method. And the method is what I'm going to tell you a little bit about. And if you follow the link, you see there is a handbook made here in Norway of Lars Kobro, also working at USN, and it's in English. First, a little bit background of the program. It's also a state-funded program that we are taking part, the whole new county actually. It's about integrating mental health into public health work in the municipalities, and this is a program that runs for 10 years. The obligation is to take part in this systematic work and developing measures to cope with mental health and drug abuse. There is a common vision that we made here in Vestfold together with the municipalities that says, in Vestfold, children and youth grow up in environments where they flourish, experience well-being and acquire life skills. And it's a quite bold vision, but it's important for mental health. And the core of the work, there are many different projects. I'm only going to tell you about one of those, but the core for all is this appreciative approach to resources in individuals, groups, communities and institutions to promote mental health and well-being. So, the same as the last project or program I showed you about local area, the municipalities, they develop the measures, the county ensures the conditions for social innovation as a method is one of the things that the county does in this program. I will just tell you a little bit about this cycle of innovation that we have actually invented in the project or together with the municipalities. And it says that first, this illustration, just I know it's in Norwegian, but you can see the circles and it's a cycle that is illustrated there, and it goes on every year. So this is these 4 elements we put in to this cycle of innovation. We have this gathering, a big innovation arena. All the project workers are there, and they also have these participation groups, and we stay in a big room together and work parallel on the project. And we have also arrangements that everyone is attending to, and they also work in groups. Unfortunately, we won't have that now because of the corona situation, so I think we're doing it digitally this year. And we have different courses in facilitation skills because working in social innovation, you need to nurture it. You need to work as a gardener. So you need these facilitation skills. And we have learning networks for the municipalities so they can learn from each other. And we also have this learning by reporting. So I guess that if you have experience that being in a project, you have to do all this reporting to those who fund it. But then we have this method that is designed so that you can learn with learning points on that, so that you can know what you have to do better the next time. Okay, that was a little bit into this cycle of innovation, social innovation, and here is a list of the Vestfold part of the program, the projects, and the picture is from this innovation arena. So the project I'm going to tell you a little bit about now, to give you an example of a setting, is the gaming project in Horten community. And I think that actually this project is very much into this to stay active, to belong to somewhere, and to commit. This was an empty room in the recently refurbished municipal cultural house, and now it is filled with the technology a gamer not having all the money in the world can dream of. And also they have analog board games there. And the aim is gaming as a tool for health promotion. It's a cross-sectorial project in the municipality. And it's also, they have a participation group of young people involved in filling the room in the program because they have arrangements, and how to develop the project. And what I find quite like innovative in this project is that the parents, the grown-ups, are also involved. They have this thinking about adult education or parent education. That is also an aim in the project. And I think that this is actually something that can relieve or try to relieve the cross-generational distress that's happen in many families based on the lack of status that gaming and digital activity actually has. Because surveys shows that parents, they are very into, if their children are into sports or playing instruments, they're very involved in that. But when it comes to that digital activity, they are more absent. And this is actually a setting that is worthwhile to implement public health thinking, because we also have this survey, and it's from 2018, that says that 96% of boys between 9 and 18 are playing, 63% of girls. This room is open 3 days a week. They have differing opening hours for different age groups. And there are always someone there to assist. And they also have these arrangements. And they say that per day there are about 30 to 50 visitors. Okay, now I'm going in for landing. I will show you the last setting, and that is a very exciting setting, I think, and important. Life skills and health on the agenda in all schools. There is a reform going on in the school sector in Norway at the moment, and it starts in this autumn. And it's called Knowledge Promotion Reform in School. And there was this report informing this reform that says they made a big report to inform policy, and it's called No Less Than the School for the Future. And what they found was that it's important to have these 3 interdisciplinary topics: health and life skills, sustainable development, democracy, and citizenship. And in the topic of health and life skills, it's about giving the pupils competence which promotes sound physical and mental health, and which provides opportunities for making responsible life choices. And I think that this is like a very interesting turn in the educational system in Norway. And how are they going to implement that? Well, this is in Norwegian, I know, but it says, I will tell you what it shows. You can see that this, it's like a cake, you can see, and it goes through. This is how to introduce health and life skills in every subject on the curricula. It's not that they're going to have one subject about it, but they're going to introduce it whenever it is natural. For example, learning about emotions through literature, personal economy in the math class, sexuality in the biology class. So there are a lot of different elements in this life skills way of thinking, or interdisciplinary way of thinking it. So what about the mission? You can see in the middle there is the Learning Act, it says. So what about the Public Health Act? There has been quite a debate about introducing this into school, because, well, how are you going to give grades in life skills, for example? How are they going to, is that wise to introduce it in the school like this? Well, I won't take any standpoint there now, but there has been already implemented a lot of programs, and they are going through deep evaluations. And what we did a couple of months ago, we had this seminar and we put on the agenda life skills in the perspective of public health, and we invited a quite famous here psychologist called Anne-Kristin Imenes. And among all the things that she told us about it was the importance of the awareness of how it feels to have a good mental health. And this is from her presentation. She introduced us to these 7 mental health rights, and they are developed by another famous psychologist in Norway called Arne Holte. And if you follow the link in this slide, you will get to quite an extraordinary conversation between actually Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin discussing this. And it's, of course, arranged. But Arne Holte, he held this presentation in an international psychologist conference a few years ago. And there's a lot of references to research. So I think it's important. It's interesting to look into it. But these 7 mental health rights is about, you can see, identity, a sense of being someone. How does that feel? Meaning of life, sense of being part of something bigger than yourself. Mastery, the sense of being capable of doing something you know how to do. The belonging. And the security is about how it is to think, feel, and have the possibility to unfold without being afraid. And participation, sense that it matters to someone what you do or do not. And community, the sense of having someone to share your thoughts and feelings with, that you're not alone. And in the end now, I will show you an example that Imenes told us about. That is one of many other good examples about population-based interventions or measures in the school setting or in the classroom. Just a second. Here it comes. I know this is also in Norwegian. I will translate for you. It's the easiest thing that you can think of, actually. It's about playing, using playing as a pedagogical tool in the teaching of life skills. Because playing is like a non-competitive cooperation. It's for everyone to take part in. And it's like when you do it, most of the pupils, they will find it fun, easy, and engaging. But for some, it will be difficult in the beginning. But when they finally fully join in, it will be amazing and give them a feeling of flow. And this is like very easy, and it involves everyone. And you might know that grown or bigger children, like teenagers, they also like to play, and it's a way of getting to know each other. So this is just to illustrate for you like a measure that is population-based in a way that it includes everyone. It's not stigmatizing the vulnerable groups. And maybe it doesn't mean so much for those who already play, those who think it easy, but it will mean a lot for those who think it's difficult in the beginning. So, my last slide is questions for your group work that I have. I suggest that you can work on. I have 3 different questions, and I can introduce them to you now. Okay. What other settings in young people's lives than mentioned in my lecture do you find important for good mental health and well-being? Can you think of other than I mentioned and discuss them? And I'll challenge you to think of your own context and experience. What would be the most important promotive actions ensuring good mental health for future generations of young people. As I said earlier, that many of you know how it is to work with vulnerable groups, but what would be the promotive actions that could maybe prevented them from being in the situation they are in? And can you think of a well-being intervention aiming at shifting the whole population into a lower risk category? Well, the bell curve that I introduced for you, in the settings of learning, for example, thinking of other measures than this playing tool that I showed you. Okay, so thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Elin. That was really, really a good presentation, but also maybe for someone, because in our participants come from really different local realities and cultures, and also other things pointed out in the chat. So this is like this public health dimension, like in everything. It kind of feels like overwhelming. Who am I, a youth worker, in this part? So the first question is, what is the youth worker's role in public health sector?
Well, I think a youth worker in public health sector is the first thing I can think of is that it's an important channel for canalizing knowledge about this group to those working in the public health sector, because maybe we can feel sometimes that we look at this at a distance. We do all these statistics, for example, but then again, public health workers are so much. And in the county, we are maybe a bit distant from the population, but in the municipalities, they work more closely with the populations. So I think all the knowledge that the public worker can get coming from those who are there working with people is very important.
And the importance in this is like, this is a bottom-up approach.
Really,
so
yes.
the policy making comes from the bottom, not from the top.
Yes.
And that is also really ensuring to know that it's pinpointed to the group that you are working with. So you are not sitting in the top and trying to figure out a way how to solve things, but you ask the people that have the shoes on how to do it.
Exactly, and especially when we are in planning processes, we need participation from different groups, and then those who can be there to make contact, for example, is also important. So I was thinking that I got this picture that many of you are in NGOs and regional or municipality authorities. Here actually we are used to cooperate with NGOs, and that is very, like, it informs us in making policy.
We thank you all for all your good questions in the chat, and we will write the answers and get back to every one of you. But now you will be not broken into a breakout group, but you will be divided into breakout groups and you can discuss further. And if you have more questions, just use the chat.